without further ado, the one, the only Tiffany FitzHenry joins me right now. She's an author, screenwriter, researcher, and YouTuber, and she's blowing up. She's big. Tiffany, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Sean. I'm so excited to talk to you.
I'm so excited to have you, following you on Twitter for quite some time. And not too long ago, Roseanne Barr sung your praises on the Joe Rogan Experience. That had to be pretty cool for you.
That was really cool. Roseanne she's somebody who I feel really compelled to tell her story, and I will be telling her full story coming up very shortly. And she's somebody who we could see so clearly, the whole Hollywood machine just through what happened to her. So she's a good friend of mine, and I love her very much.
Well, I think she's a kindred spirit, and what I like about Roseanne a lot is that she's extremely self-deprecating. And I frankly think that the cast of her show really did her a disservice by going on with that show when she got dumped by ABC for sending out a tweet about somebody who was worthy of a tweet being sent out. And it wasn't a racist tweet. And I don't think Roseanne meant it to be a racist tweet.
What's absolutely stunning, Sean, is that she wasn't actually comparing Valerie Jarrett's looks. She, and this is all going to be in the forthcoming article that I've been talking to Roseanne for this exclusive telling of her story and telling of what the tweet actually meant and how this all came about. It was not racist in nature at all. And it was actually ABC who put that picture there. But the tweet that was referring to Planet of the Apes, it was talking about classism. And it was talking about the Iran deal and how it was in favor of basically the mullahs, which are basically the oligarchs. And if you go back and you watch the show Planet of the Apes, it's all about class. It's all about the elite class. It's all about the people. Everything that we're talking about right now on this planet. She was having an ongoing 3-month conversation about that with people in Iran on Twitter, and ABC knew that. And ABC was tracking it and following it, and she was talking about Planet of the Apes all the time. This is one of her favorite shows because Roseanne is obsessed with class and the class divide on the planet. So there was absolutely nothing racist about it at all, which people don't know because that picture got inserted right away. So then people just mentally thought that that's what the tweet was about. So there's so many things that I'm going to be coming out to tell everybody on Roseanne's behalf. And I'm very lucky to do that and very honored to do that.
Well, good. And I'm sure she'd come on with you. I mean, I'd love to see a conversation between the two of you. And I agree. I just, in her defense, though, there is a similarity between that actor made up and Valerie Jarrett. And she is a comedian, Roseanne. So the minute you make comedy off limits when it comes to politics, you've really entered deep fascism. And we're going to talk about that to the degree that classical fascism, I guess, as described by Mussolini, is the marriage of government and business. And I don't think there's a better example of that right now than the mainstream Mockingbird horror media, right? All aligned against the sitting president politically. And Netflix. I know that you are going to start doing some deep research on Netflix, so we can talk about that in a second. Would it be okay with you, in the interest of sharing good news, for me to read an article for you? You may not have heard about this. I just covered this briefly in my interview with Bob Kudla about this woman in Texas, a mother who wants to force her 7-year-old to go through the transition process from a 7-year-old boy to a 7-year-old girl. The father, I guess they're divorced now, fighting her tooth and nail, and a Texas jury unfortunately ruled against the father. Here's the good news, guys. Texas court gives 7-year-old boy a reprieve from transgender treatments. Now, here's the good news, folks. If you wonder why we vote and stay active, it's because there are good people out there in politics. And I guess the flip side to that, guys, is if you don't vote, we're going to be overrun by these liberals. In a closely watched Dallas, Texas child custody case, Judge Kim Cooks put aside the disappointing jury's verdict of Monday against the father and ruled Thursday that Jeffrey Younger now has equal joint conservatorship with the mother, Dr. Ann Gargulis, of their twin boys. Now, if we skip down, the public outcry and nationwide media attention were significant. Texas Republican Governor Greg Abbott announced state child protection agencies would investigate, and Texas Senator Ted Cruz encouraged Texas lawmakers to act to keep children from being given surgeries and hormones to make them appear more as their opposite sex. This mother wanted to chemically castrate this boy, Tiffany, And the father said, no way. And I saw a video on Steven Crowder just today of the little boy being interviewed by his dad. He looked like a vibrant, normal little boy who just happened to say, I love girls, which I think is super positive for a little guy. But mom wanted to transition him to a girl. I mean, we've just jumped the shark in ways none of us could have imagined a decade ago.
It's unimaginable. It is unimaginable. And as the adults of this planet, we have to put a stop to it. And we have to absolutely say, no, call me what you want. That is absolutely child abuse. I mean, it's beyond the pale. This would have been inconceivable 5 years ago. You know, and I live in an area that is a very sort of middle, you know, regular grassroots people, regular, you know, sort of down home people. And when my daughter started sixth grade, about, let's see how old she is now, about 5 years ago, there was one child who had been a girl, had come back to school and was now dressing like a boy. Her haircut was like a boy, and she wanted to be treated like a boy. And she wanted to, you know, the administration, and this was, you know, whatever, about 5 years ago, right when all this just started. And there was a situation with the bathroom, and there was a situation, but you could tell there were mental and emotional issues with the child, and also the administration didn't know what to do about any of this. Flash forward 5 years, there are I would say 30 or 20 kids in that now same grade who don't know what gender they are, who, you know, all of this, and it's an emergency, actually, at this point.
Do you believe, as I do, that it is part of a protocol, it's part of a strategy to destroy a country from within, to introduce this type of mental illness? Because that's what it is. And look, for people who don't understand, folks who do transition chemically from one sex to another are 19 times more likely to commit suicide versus the general population. So I think the mother in Texas ought to do her own research and let that sink in, unless she has an agenda, which I would guess is probably more likely. She has an agenda, and she wants to perpetrate that agenda on her own son. Because if she actually cared about the well-being of the boy, she would not rush this transition at age 7.
I think what's sick is that and this is something I experienced in Hollywood a great deal, is we live in a culture that socializes us to be self-centered in a way that's, you know, this Instagram culture, you know, it's only just gotten heightened, but where I think that this mother is motivated by there's a sick set of social rewards that go along with having these gender confused children. You as the parent get sort of hoisted up by these communities and these people who call you a hero. They make you into an icon. I think it has a lot to do with the weak and self-centered and very lacking in God nature of possibly the mother, if we could speculate. Because when you have yourself at the center of everything, you do lack God, you know, and you do lack anything other than, I mean, and that's when I think is satanic about all this. It's like, because it is that self-worship, and there's nowhere to go but down with that.
I completely agree. I've made the same point in multiple videos. I think that the problem with the left, and the problem with atheists, sorry, atheists, but my opinion, but the left specifically, is that so many of them are godless. And when you take God out of the equation, you're left with the rule of man. And we can see what a slippery slope into hell that is. And it has been throughout history. The only thing protecting us from it is the Declaration of Independence and the documents, the Bill of Rights and the Constitution. Here's the thing. In addition to the mother, what do you think the deal is on this jury? They voted 11-1 that while, yes, the boy should have a sole main conservatory, they didn't agree that it should be the father. That they wanted to let this woman go forward with this mad plan to transition her son to a daughter, to a girl, at age 7. What is wrong with this jury?
Well, I have to, it's like, I want to give people more credit than that. It surprises me because I have to wonder what the other details are of, I guess they were divorced, obviously. Maybe this father was unfit in ways that we don't know about, because that seems crazy to me, that 11 normal people would sign on for this. I just can't, is there something we don't know about the case? Because it just seems crazy to me. And is this how far, people's minds have devolved? I don't know.
Yeah. Well, again, though, thanks to right-thinking judge Kim Cooks, who put aside the jury's verdict on Monday against the father and ruled Thursday that Jeffrey Younger now has equal joint conservatorship with the mother, Dr. Ann Gargulis, of their twin boys. It's quite a story because obviously, had it not gone this way, the father would have appealed, and ultimately it would have led to a litmus test, I guess, some sort of standard by which all future cases might be measured. I guess they call that, what do they call that in law?
Precedence.
Thank you, precedence. Yeah, the word escaped me.
Well, what about this doctor? Sorry, but that's the other thing. What about these doctors who are doing this to these children? Knowing the statistics, knowing the suicide increase risk, knowing that you can't actually transition, you can't actually change genders. So the whole thing is predicated on a lie. Every cell in your body stays male. It doesn't, you can't change that.
That's right.
And it's all, it's so damaging to, mental, the body, to be giving a little boy estrogen. We don't even understand probably the effects, what that's going to be doing to someone. And these doctors, I just don't get it.
Yeah, well, and it reminds me of abortion doctors who would perform that procedure in the 9th month or any month. But, before we get off this topic of transgenderism, how about all of these athletes, men transitioning to quote unquote women and then winning cycling championships and winning weightlifting championships and setting new world records? It's absolutely preposterous, and it could only happen in what Paul Joseph Watson calls clown world, upside down world.
Yeah. If people on, the left want to talk about misogyny all the time, right? This is serious misogyny. You're literally eradicating women's ability to accomplish anything. Talk about the height of misogyny. And yet this is progress. It's so backwards.
It's such progress, though. Think about it. They're fighting the patriarchy. These women don't want to have husbands, and they don't want to have children, and they don't want to raise the children, and they think that having an abortion is some sort of act of feminism, Tiffany. And I think that speaks to the mental illness. I mean, when we detach ourselves from the creator and the idea of a creator, I think this is where we end up. And it's a slippery slope into the abyss, into hell, really, frankly.
It is into hell. And I think part of the problem is we don't have any actual sort of role models. All the role models have been taken out of our culture for what a man and what masculinity really is, to cover someone, to protect them, to be, men are logical, women are more intuitive. We don't have these role models, and we need them desperately, of what it is to be a woman and why that's special and why that's unique and why that's divine and godly and what it is to be a man. And we have lost these role models. And, Hollywood's a big part of the problem to this whole thing. I mean, look no further than the stories we're being told on the news and in Hollywood for all of these problems, frankly.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about your Hollywood experience, because it's fascinating to me. Harvey Weinstein, Kevin Spacey, they tell us Pizzagate is not real. They tell us Pedogate's not a problem. Did you encounter any of that in your experiences writing or doing anything out there in Hollywood?
I encountered creepy things. I encountered a lot of constant sexual harassment, like constant, being solicited for nudes constantly from the top people. And it's basically about building a blackmail folder on people who they're going to elevate.
Wait. Can you back up? Did you say you were solicited for nudes from powerful people? Is that what you just said?
Constantly.
Of yourself?
On a regular basis.
Who would do that? Like, who would do that? Like, for instance,
my manager, my, producers, big people whose names you know.
What?
Yeah, it's all about these gatekeepers. It's all about these handlers. These agents and these managers they're handlers. And it's about, okay, great, Tiffany, we want to make your shows. We want to make your movies. You've got stars attached. I've got networks, fighting over projects. That there's these other things you need to do. It's not just about being the most talented person who's able to get to that echelon. You also have to be willing to do anything, and then they'll elevate you. If you're above the line, particularly, and I'm not sure how familiar your audience is with that term, but above the line in Hollywood and below the line in Hollywood is about the way the budgets are structured. And above the line is the writers, the directors, the actors, and the producers. And these people are people who are going to have influence. People like James Gunn, their name. Bryan Singer's name. Steven Spielberg's name. David E. Kelly, Shonda Rhimes. These names, these writers, directors, producers. And it's those people who, if they're given the platform, if they're elevated, because they can elevate anyone. Why wouldn't they elevate people, in this closed power system of controlled influence? Why wouldn't they elevate people that they can completely own? Because what's more powerful than being powerful is owning a bunch of powerful people. I mean, that's how the sick people think, and that's how Hollywood was built. And that's what it is. It's just a pyramid of controlled influence. That's all it is. It's because they need to control the storytellers in order to control the stories, in order to control your mind. It's not like super complicated, but it's amazing to me that it's taken us this long to really put it all together. You know what I mean?
Well, I think it's part of the Great Awakening, right? So when I got into this on YouTube, I guess I started back in around late 2010, 2011. You weren't around. I didn't know you. I didn't know Red Pill 78. True Stream Media hadn't emerged yet. My friends Aaron and Melissa, who left InfoWars. There's so many great examples of new truth tellers out there, and I'd be remiss if I didn't mention my friend Oli Damagard and Red Ice Radio and Red Ice TV, who just got banned from YouTube. There's so many great people out there who are now, as Q says, we are the news now. Yeah. And it scares the hell out of CNN. It scares the hell out of the controllers because they no longer control the narrative. And that's, I think, been Hollywood's job for many, many years. And of course, their partners in crime, the mainstream media, the mainstream CIA, Mockingbird media's job was to control the narrative for the establishment. And they're losing control, Tiffany.
What was so cool about the whole Ellen thing that happened where everybody saw her and Bush together was, a month earlier, millions of people had read what I'd written about what Ellen really is. And so we are the news because we're changing the timeline in essence, because I'm compelled to come out and tell this truth about her because Andy Lassner's just, being a jerk on Twitter. So I'm like, all right, it's time to throw down. Because by the way, I could do this to anyone and everyone in Hollywood. I could spend a month and dig into Ben Affleck, and you would not believe that, his the best man at his grandparents' wedding was Tom Braden, the guy who started the CIA fund over culture. This started the CIA program over culture. Was the best man at Ben Affleck's grandparents' wedding. That's one thing about him. I have a folder on each of these people, right? And I could do this to anyone. So it's like when that happened, and I went ahead and said, okay, Ellen, nothing against you, but it's time to throw down. And then when the Bush thing happened, all of these people, they knew what they were looking at. And then, okay, great, come on RT, talk about this research. Okay, great, now millions more people look at her and go, oh my God, I'm just gonna turn that off because it's just, she's just a foreground shill for something else. It's not real. It's really, we're changing the timeline, and it's so empowering, and everybody should feel like, okay, great, what do we want to create? Because look how powerful we are. We can create, these conditions whereby we're changing people's state of mind, and then we're going to change who we're putting out in front of us. We're doing that. It's really cool.
It is cool. And I just sent out a SGT report email blast the other day in which I, with, some hesitation, mentioned Joe Rogan because I do think he's become quite a gatekeeper to the degree that he's really backpedaled on a lot of truths he used to share. And his platform is now, I think, the second biggest podcast or second most downloaded podcast in the world. But the point I was trying to make is that teenagers are listening to him. Millennials, Gen Xers, all these people are listening to him that are no longer going to ABC News or CNN or MSNBC to hear the lies. And to Rogan's credit, he had on Edward Snowden the other day, and Snowden chose Rogan because he knew he could talk for 3 hours without being taken out of context or edited. So again, we are the news now. Now, Joe Rogan may not be as good a truth teller as you, and he may not speak the truths I speak. I think he used to, but he's, again, really backpedaled from that. But he does bring on interesting guests, and I know the teenagers are all listening to Rogan, which is a hell of a lot better than them listening to CNN.
Maybe it's steps, it's steps in the awakening, because you have to think about how lied to we were. And, we have to back into the truth slowly, or we'll just go nuts, because it's someone coming at you telling you your whole world is fake. Your whole world is not real. And I have teenage kids, 17 and 16, and they're going through this exact same thing that we are all going through. It's unbelievable to me. It's like we're all in a time, no matter what generation you're living in, because we're in this time right now together on this planet, that everything has to become real. Everything that was in our world was in one way or another fake, and all of it's falling away. And slowly we have to sort of mourn all that, but also get about the task of building the new. And so we're like this bizarre transition team to be right here, right now, together. It's really something.
Well, and it's exciting. And I think here's the thing about truth. It's inspirational. It's aspirational. It makes you feel good. And yeah, it may crash your normalcy bias or your cognitive dissonance when you find out about World Trade Center 7 on 9/11 collapsing at 5:20 in the afternoon and the BBC reporting about it 20 minutes early while the building's still standing behind Jane Stanley. That's going to blow your mind. And it's going to bum you out when you realize the official story is far more palatable than what actually happened that day. So it's painful to wake up. But maybe you've noticed, as I have, you can't force people to wake up. They have to want to wake up. They have to choose to wake up on their own. They have to do their own research. But more and more people are starting to do that, Tiffany. I mean, it's a sea change. It's happening at a far greater pace today than it was even 3, 4, 5 years ago. And again, that scares the hell out of the establishment.
I think it's losing control of the narrative and losing control of the ability to shape people's thoughts and opinions about events, about their world, about their government. That's the game over. I mean, that is literally game over. And what's so compelling and what's so true is that once you wake up, you can't go back to sleep. Try as you might, right? You literally can never unknow the things that you know. Consciousness only works one way. It only rises. And if you think about the whole planet and the consciousness of the whole planet, that the consciousness never lowers, it only ever raises. Even on 9/11, right, where we were all mass traumatized, we didn't know what we were looking at, we believed, I can speak for myself, believed the official narrative. Consciousness rose on that day, still, because there were millions of people all over the world who knew exactly what they were looking at. And they were like, wow, this is where we're at. The deep state could actually do this this is how much, so the consciousness rose on that day and people made plans on that day to start taking it down. And so even mass trauma events, even Epstein, even though we're all so awake, I heard from people in my own life who were calling me, people who weren't awake, aunts, things like that, saying, this is what you've been talking about. He definitely didn't commit suicide. I'm like, I don't think so either. You know what I mean? Like, well, keep digging into it, because I think you might be onto something with that. And there's going to be something for everybody to wake up. But you're right. They have to do it on their own.
Yeah, I've got so many notes I'm jotting down as you say that. 9/11, I think 9/11 to me was a ceremony, a ritual sacrifice. And so for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. And as powerful as an event and as traumatizing as that was on that day for all of us who witnessed it live as I did, and many of us were allowed ourselves to get whipsawed into supporting, and I didn't. I had no desire at all to see our troops go into Iraq, who had nothing to do with that event. But of course, Iraq got conflated with 9/11, and the next thing you know, we're in Iraq killing people. Our troops are. I think it was a ceremony. It was a ritual sacrifice. And the equal and opposite reaction to that powerful, powerful event is that it stuck with people and it woke up a lot of people in droves. Maybe not on that day, but you knew something was wrong. You had a sick sense that people would never, ever willingly jump out of a building unless it was so damn hot within that building that they were forced out by the heat. That didn't add up because those buildings were not on fire. There was no visible explosions coming from those buildings with balls of fire when people were jumping. So I knew something was wrong and I couldn't put my finger on it. But the equal and opposite reaction was I spent the next year and a half or two researching. And then I found out about David Ray Griffin. And I found out a few years later about architects and engineers for 9/11 Truth. And I found out about World Trade Center 7. And then the BBC. And then the thermite, the nanothermite. If you go down that rabbit hole, you can't help but wake up. But I got to warn anybody who hasn't done it, it is painful. Waking up can be painful. But on the other side, it's like the birthing process, Tiffany. It's painful for a mother to give birth, but what joy comes after that birthing process is over.
Yeah, and you don't even really know true joy until you get to something real. And we've had a fake world. We've had an illusion world. And so I don't think we even yet know how great it's going to be when everything is real. Everything we've had has been fake. Fake idols, fake movie stars, fake this, fake that. They're actually CIA. They're actually deep state. Fake journalists. How great is it going to be to have real journalism? I can't even, on a big level, to where it's like, we know corruption has no place because it's going to get found out. No matter what, we're going to be that vigilant. We're going to know the difference. The whole world's going to know the difference. It is exciting to think about the fact that everything that you've watched coming out of Hollywood has been so masterfully manipulated, filled with agendas, tightly controlled. What's it going to be like when you're able to watch what artists want to create? You've never laughed so hard. You've never cried so hard. You've never felt less alone in the world, because that's what stories are supposed to do. And so to me, it's exciting to think for all of this that we've gone through and how terrible awakening really is. It's very hard. It's so hard. As you said, what we're going to get, the gift we're going to get on the other side is going to be that newborn baby, right? That new world. And it's going to be mind-blowing. So much joy, so much love, so much purity. Everywhere we look, it's just going to be, the food is going to be amazing, because all of this will be exposed. Everything will be exposed. And so...
Well, I've got good news I want to share with people here in a second about the deep state and the panic being palpable in Washington, D.C., which I've been reporting about. So many of us have. So I'll hang on to that soundbite for a minute. But let's bridge back to Hollywood for a second. Because, I've been on a bit of a Mark Maron watch. And I want to share a soundbite with you here in a second. Mark Maron also has a huge podcast with more than 300,000 listeners and millions upon millions of monthly downloads. And he's a guy that absolutely hates our president. Meanwhile, look, not everybody has a successful marriage. I've never been divorced, and, we have children, and we've been together for more than 20 years. Mark has had a few failed marriages, and he's fatherless. He's never had any kids, and he's a hardcore lefty. And it really makes me wonder if one of the reasons that he's such a hardcore lefty is because he has no children. I think anybody who has kids starts to see life in a very different way and starts to make room for God in the equation. Mark Maron's also an atheist. So let me just play this soundbite from his recent podcast the other day that he released with Hollywood special effects artist Rick Baker. And this is how he led the podcast, which I think is just repulsive given his audience. He must have Republicans who listen to him and conservatives, but he doesn't evidently care. Listen to this, Tiffany.
And I think it's also important that I just say this at least once a show. President Donald Trump is a scumbag. He's a fucking morally bankrupt douchebag. He's a weak piece of shit. And it's like, is that just name calling? Yes, it is. But I've grown to believe that I did not just make a political statement. I think it's time to reframe the conversation.
Right.
All right, I'll pause it there. Tiffany, I hate to take your time like that and play Mark Maron's vitriol, but where do you suppose that comes from? Because as I've made the point in several videos here, a recent one about Mark Maron specifically is the alternative is a hardcore globalist witch who told Goldman Sachs she has two policies. One she tells the public, and one she shares private with banksters. She also got caught, well, at least the Clinton Foundation and her husband did, coming to the aid of a child trafficker, Laura Silsby in Haiti, who was trying to escape the country with 33 children after that earthquake. She's also got server problems. She's got problems with Benghazi. She helped topple Gaddafi in Libya and then cackled about it. The alternative to President Donald Trump is a witch whose biggest supporter was Linda Rothschild. And I guess that's all A-okay with somebody like Mark Maron, who is a fatherless liberal atheist.
I think it just comes from this, like you're talking about, this worldview that it's so funny that you bring this up, because my husband and I were talking about this as well, not having children and how that makes people different in terms of what they're thinking that the world is about, or how do they care in the same way that we care, and how do they have an actual concept of what really matters if you're not leaving children and grandchildren here? How do we even take you seriously in a way? And I hate to say that, but the older I get, the more I start to feel like, and I don't want to say anything against anybody who's chosen not to have children, but I don't know. I don't think you're grounded in the same world that the rest of us are grounded in. And someone like this saying, it's just a fact now, it's moving the goalposts. It's saying there is no more political debate. My answer is the right answer. It's a very fascist thing to say.
Yeah, it's fascist, and it's so intellectually dishonest, right? Because, again, he laments constantly climate change. He laments the fact that he believes that the earth is going to implode because we're not paying carbon taxes to bankers. And so we can talk about UN Agenda 2030 and Greta and all of the lies, all of the fake news, if you'd like. But the other problem with Mark Maron is that he's gleeful about this impeachment inquiry against President Donald J. Trump. He's filled with joy over this, and he continues to not tell his audience that the crimes of Joe Biden in Ukraine are on the record as Biden celebrated trying to getting the prosecutor who was investigating his son Hunter fired by withholding $1 billion in military aid. And Biden celebrated that and admitted to it in front of the Council on Foreign Relations, which is on YouTube. Anybody can watch it on the CFR channel. But Maron leaves that out, right? That's all these people do is lie by omission. I think that's what gets me at the end of the day. And they love to bear false witness against their neighbor.
Well, yeah, and too, it's like this alternate reality that's being created. And that I worry about that. How, are we going to be expected to share one reality? Because at this point, we're really splitting to the point where if we can't all agree on the facts, you know what I mean? If the facts are offensive to you or something that you believe is just not true, when it actually, here's the footage, this is what was going on, these are the crimes. Why are you so married to these people? Who are you carrying water for? Why? And I think it's so much brainwashing. I think it's brainwashing. I think it's particular to people of very, very high education, these Ivy League universities. I think they're the easiest to brainwash. I really do. It's the scrappier ones like us who have had to think and figure things out and discern, who get less attached to things. And we don't attach things to our identity in the same way. And it's like, all right, look, I voted for Barack Obama. I did in 2008. I was just, this is great. I mean, in my late 20s, I'm like, don't really know what I don't know about the world. I'm not racist. I love all people. Great. That's yeah. He sounds great. I had to reconcile then and go, whoa, I was uninformed. I didn't know. I wanted the Patriot Act back in 2004. I was like, let's go kill terrorists. I mean, 9/11 worked on me in a big way. It wasn't until 2012 when I started to have some of my experiences in Hollywood and I started to watch YouTube and I started to do my own research that I was like, I was wrong. And there's a certain level of humility, obviously, that you have to get to say, I wanted these things. Now I see where I was wrong and I see what the fruits of those things are. So I've learned and I'm going to fight for the right thing, even though it's hard and even we're being told not to. It's, it's self-awareness too, to sit there and say, oh, Hillary's great. What's great about Hillary? What particularly do you love about her? And you can never get an answer from people. Is it her Libya policy that you love so much? Is it this, long line of dead people that you find so fabulous and fascinating around the Clintons? What is it that you love? What do you adore about her? Mm-hmm. You can never get an answer.
Well, I don't actually think they adore her at all. I think they adore their ideology. And their ideology is a godless one that leans towards socialism and ultimately communism. And the slippery slope here is that, I made the point in a recent video about Mark Maron that I think he's a lot like Ellen DeGeneres. He had on Barack Obama as a guest, and Obama didn't just phone in. Obama and the entire entourage and the Secret Service came to Mark Maron's house in California, and Obama sat in the famous garage. Now, Mark Maron has since sold that house, and he's got a new, nicer house because he makes a boatload of money spewing this garbage. But, the bottom line is, I think it's all about their ideologies. And I think Mark Maron probably has the same deal Ellen has, which is he's going to play along with the liberals in power. And as a result, he'll be rewarded. He's not going to see any of his stuff demonetized, right? He's not going to see any of his view counts curbed. He's not going to be buried in search results by Google like you are and like I am and like Truth Media has been. What is it about President Trump that these people hate so much?
And you almost have to get to the conclusion that there is a controlled deep state system, and he is going against that system. I think that's almost like the only conclusion you can come to at the point. It's like everyone I hate hates him. So by de facto, you know what I mean? I'm hoping that he really is taking apart this deep state system.
Mm-hmm.
I
think there's a huge problem with doublethink, right? I mean, Orwell got it right. So right is wrong, bad is good, black is white, up is down. And I think at the end of the day, when they can blur the lines about what gender is, they're blurring the lines on everything. And that's the problem. What they're trying to do, I think, Tiffany, is brainwash a young generation, like that 7-year-old little boy in Texas. Little kids are easily brainwashed. And if they're going to grow up in a society where there is no truth, there are no goalposts, everything is whatever you feel, we're in for a lot of trouble. We're in for a lot of hurt. And you and I remain hopeful because there is this great awakening and we're all fighting against that, I think, agenda. So in the spirit of sharing good news, let's go to this clip. This was shared over here by Undercover Hoober, originally by Ned Ryan on Twitter. Nervous much, Jimmy? Let's listen to James Clapper in his recent interview here with Anderson Cooper on CNN. See if I can get the volume here.
And oversaw the launch of the Russia investigation. What do you make of this?
Well, actually, I'm very curious, since presumably I guess I'm one of those under investigation.
And you just heard about this?
Yes, I just read the clip on about 20 minutes ago. I found the timing interesting, given the increasing heat around the impeachment inquiry.
I'll pause it right there. I love how Clapper and Brennan will continue to try to fall back on this bogus Democrat-led impeachment inquiry of President Trump for the crimes of Joe Biden. Again, I will continue to make that case over and over. They are trying to impeach our president for the crimes of Joe Biden. And Clapper's on the run because Brennan and Durham are on the case. And evidently, the Justice Department has opened a criminal inquiry, and involved in that are Clapper and Brennan, and they're now lawyering up, Tiffany.
There's so much happening. And I think that when you look at people like this, I cannot get over the fact that, and this is off topic, but he looks like the little guy in Lord of the Rings to me, and I can't not see it. A little like troll thing who has the ring and whatever that character is called. I can't not see it anytime he talks. But we're looking at swamp creatures being revealed. We're looking at them do what they do, which is they try to spin, but the spin doesn't work. That doesn't work. There's no part of this that I think people escape. I had this premonition this morning where I was thinking, okay, Elijah Cummings died. I really feel like we're going to start to hear, oh, Nancy Pelosi died. Oh, so-and-so died. Oh, we're going to have to watch all these funerals, blah, blah, blah. I really think that's coming to the point where these people are either being put down. These people are either disappearing. I don't know what it is, but I just have this feeling that we're going to start to see a lot of deaths of people whose names we know. And whatever, take that for what it's worth. It's not like a prediction, but it's just a premonition. But the walls are closing in. They've been operating in this way for a very long time that everybody thought it was absolutely fine to operate. We've been living, these people were at the height of a fallen world. These people existed at the top of a fallen world. So everything that they had to do in order to get to the top of a fallen world was bad. You know what I'm saying? It's not like they're at the top of a righteous world.
Right.
They had to literally be the worst of the worst, the baddest of the bad, in order to be the most high. So it's going to get ugly. I think it's going to get real ugly.
Let me ask you something, and it's a conversation that would be lost on somebody like Mark Maron, but the question that comes up for me time and time again is that in a fallen world where literally they've hidden all truth, they've made every effort to hide truth, and we don't have to get into NASA and moon missions that may or may not have happened or any of that stuff, or even the nature of the world itself, but why do you think so many of them have chosen to take part in these lies? Because I do think I agree with you to the extent that to achieve hundreds of millions, George Clooney might be a great example. There are certainly others, but to achieve that kind of success and, you did a nice report on George Clooney and his tequila enterprise not adding up. The numbers don't work on a tequila enterprise for the payout that they got, $1 billion payout for a small tequila company. But I think you have to, and I'm not saying George Clooney did specifically, but Angelina Jolie, another great example. What was she, ambassador to the United Nations also? I think these people, many of them, have played ball with this globalist cabal, call it a new world order. And I guess at the end of the day, without knowing for sure, you could make the argument that many of them have sold their souls for this type of success. And I wonder why.
I think it's a matter of how we've been socialized in this fallen world to believe why we're here. Who are we? Where do we come from? Why are we here? These big questions have been hijacked from us. And the answer is, you're here to collect as much stuff as possible. You're a consumer. You need to go to college. You need to get as good of a job as you can. You need to make as much money as you can. You need to take these vacations. You need to buy the biggest house you can buy. You need to. And so that sets us on an axiom of self, of service to self, instead of saying, when kids are very little, why do you think God put you here? What are you here to do? How are you here to serve? Because we're all just here to serve. That's literally why we're here. That's a Christ axiom. That's an axiom of service to others, do unto others. Whereas the satanic axiom is service to self, do as thou will. Jay-Z has a t-shirt line, do as thou will, right? And so it's a matter of being their own God in their own godless universe. And it's a matter of, these people were elevated because I think a lot of them are psychopaths and sociopaths. And I think that once they learned how the system worked, George Clooney learned very early how the system worked. He was training with this famous acting coach who was basically a Scientology recruiter, and teaching them these tactics of, you compromise yourself to powerful people, and the more you compromise yourself, it's just like Scientology. You trade secrets for influence. Trade more secrets, get more influence. Compromise yourself. The more we own you, the more we'll elevate you.
Just like Nexium.
Oh, George Clooney on the set of Roseanne was leaving nude pictures around the set of Roseanne. This is one of his first big jobs, network jobs, right? He did Facts of Life and a few things like that. And there's, this is all part of my, what I uncovered. And I've talked to her about it, and this is a guy who knows how the system worked from a young age. And he was like, all right, who do I give my compromising materials to? You know what I mean? Or just leave, dick pics around for producers to find and put up the ranks. And he moved up very quickly. I think it's a combination of, in this world where we've been socialized to be self-focused versus humanity-focused in terms of just why we're here, right? They would elevate these people in order to keep that, paradigm in the consciousness. And these people had to exemplify that of, hey, look, no one's going to hate if you got $1 billion tequila deal, if you do this, if you do that, if you're telling us we need regime change in South Sudan. It's humanitarianism, or it's literally self-service that looks like humanitarianism. It's the most demonic thing I've ever seen. And I do think it comes from, sociopaths being in charge of the world versus benevolent people.
Right.
Truly.
Well, it's interesting with Hollywood and the 6 degrees of separation. I mean, you know more about that than I do, but I mean, Clooney became a household name on ER, which I believe was a invention or concoction written by, at least the series invented by Michael Crichton, I think. I'm going off memory there. Michael Crichton, of course, behind Jurassic Park, tied in with Steven Spielberg. I mean, the whole dinosaur fable. I call it a fable. I'm starting to wonder how much they've lied to us about. When I say everything, I mean like literally everything.
Everything. I'm with you. Really, I'm with you on that.
All right. Well, as we wrap this up, let's just talk a little bit about Netflix. I know that you did a video. You took it down because you're trying to do deeper research about the Obama Netflix deal and potentially a documentary the Obamas are going to make. I think maybe called impeachment, but it's an impeachment documentary, quote unquote documentary. The problem I have with Netflix is it's the way it's throwing money at projects and at people makes no sense from a business standpoint, from a stock standpoint. I know they want to get more and more subscribers. From my research, they have 60 million subs in the United States and 155 million subs globally. But when you compare that to HBO has 140 million subscribers globally, and HBO is not throwing anywhere near the amount of money at projects and at people that Netflix is. And guys, just for those who haven't heard, Netflix has thrown $100 million at Shonda Rhimes, the producer, writer behind Grey's Anatomy and Scandal, $300 million at Glee producer Ryan Murphy, and evidently, according to you, Tiffany, the Obama's deal is even bigger.
Yeah, I want, when I did these deep dives into Ellen and Clooney, I proved, I would say pretty fairly, accurately, that these people were deep state. And I'm going to prove the same thing about Netflix with proof, because it's out there and I'll find it and I'll figure it out. But it's deep state. So the CIA, the deep state, the Pentagon, they've been in Hollywood in an official capacity, and they've been in Hollywood in an absolutely saturated capacity as well, in ways that were hidden as well. And when you look at, like you said, the money that they're spending, this is deep state money. It is. There's no explanation. There's no business explanation. There's no business model by which any of this makes sense other than total domination, total world domination. And when you start to remember and re-educate people too, people have been really brainwashed to think of entertainment and pop culture as just, it's just a fun activity. It's a leisure thing. These are our stories. There is no more important thing, actually. It's God and our stories. And that's what creates this existence. So if we don't start to understand what stories are being used to do, so, those who tell the stories rule the world, but it is even more sort of completely all-encompassing than that. You can absolutely shape everything and anything that you want if you have control of our stories. It's like we were talking earlier with the news and the narrative and all that. But fictional story, even more, people become very suggestible. And it's by design that we are that way, because I always say art is God talking, and we're supposed to be getting these messages. And everything that's supposed to be coming through artists is our birthright. Those messages are telling us, okay, here's what you're supposed to be doing. Here's what you're supposed to be building. Here's who you are. This is where you came from. Telling us all of this stuff in stories that come through artists. And so that's why it's that way, but they know it's that way. So they say, okay, well, here's 13 reasons why. And then, oh, look, the teenage suicide rate just went up 30%. Really? Of course it did. This is programming. So it's actually so much more important. That's the first deception, is we've been told it's not important. It's just entertainment. It's just your content. It's whatever. No, we are our stories. That's if we are anything as a society, we are our stories. That's what we are. That's what makes us into what we are. That's why I care so much, and why I've done everything I've done, and I'm willing to, die on this hill of, if we can save storytelling, we can literally save the world.
That's
if we
right.
can get it out from the grip of the deep state and the cabal, it changes everything. Everything. So with Netflix, everything's condensing behind Netflix and Disney right now. Everything. So even the studios that existed, even everything, it's all just condensing right behind Disney for sort of the features and Netflix for the streaming and the TV. And you're just going to see that more and more and more. And hopefully the people like us, we can be building outside the system in a way that can compete with that and give people a choice, and there will be no competition, I believe, for people.
Yeah. Well, I guess I was going to call up another article for you too and mention that. I think I have it bookmarked on my other computer, which is lagging right now, but there it is. The top paid YouTubers. I think this all sort of segues together nicely as we wrap up our conversation. You and I and others in the alternative media don't get the backing of the deep state or the corporations, right? So I think the Young Turks got some $25 million from some Saudi investors or some damn thing. So to continue to spew their lies. Meanwhile, you see these huge contracts thrown out at people like Shonda Rhimes, Ryan Murphy, the Obamas. And over on YouTube, guys, when you're unfettered and you don't have YouTube throwing up algorithms to discourage you and to prevent you from reaching your audience, Logan Paul, the 10th highest paid YouTuber in 2018, made $14.5 million. PewDiePie, $15.5 million. And then a bunch of gamers, Tiffany, that I've never even heard of. I literally don't know who these people are. Vanos Gaming, $17 million in 2018. Marky Plier, $17.5 million. He's a gamer. And then this one, you'll love this. Jeffree Star, the transgender person. Dan TDM, $18.5 million. And then Dude Perfect, $20 million. That's about the only channel I could stomach out of all of those. And then they rounded out here with Jake Paul, $21.5 million in 2018. And get this, again, year after year, the top revenue generating YouTube channel, Ryan's Toys Review, $22 million. So that's what you get from YouTube if you're not going to tell the truth and share real news like you do, like I do, and like everybody else who's being penalized on YouTube does. They don't like truth at all, and they will not reward it with monetization if they can help it.
I know. It's going to crash and burn. We're starting to really see, I believe, these technology companies be revealed. And they have been creating this false world and creating all these illusions and keeping us distracted and keeping us misinformed. And so just like we're watching everything, this is just the time we're in. So it's going to be fun and interesting to watch as people who have been creating the illusion eventually will not be able to walk down the street. I do believe that, and I know it, and I can see it happening. So if you've been creating the illusion, hope it was fun. You have been serving yourself instead of serving humanity. Hope you had fun. Those days are over.
Yeah. All right. Well, amen. From your mouth to God's ears. Q has said there will come a time when these people won't be able to walk down the streets safely and securely. And we don't wish harm. See, unlike Antifa, unlike the left, we don't start the violence. We're peaceful. You may have seen that gentleman wearing the MAGA hat being interviewed, I believe, by Vice outside of the Target Center in Minneapolis, who got spit on as somebody from the left walked by. And he shrugged it off and he said, well, can I really be surprised? That's how these people behave. That's not how we behave. And if there ever comes a time when these people aren't safe walking down the streets, it will be because the entire population has found out the truth about them and will turn against them, because the entire population will find out who they are and who they've sold their souls to. So many of them are truly evil people. All right, let's shout out your Twitter, because that's, I think, really one of the main areas where you became really popular and famous. How many, you've got 81,000 followers over there on Twitter, and it's at Tiff FitzHenry, correct?
Yeah, no, it's fun. It's trying to live to tweet another day every day. So I was in twit mode the last 12 hours, but finally just got out this morning. That's the first time that's happened. I'm super careful about what I say, because I know that, we're there because they let us be there. That's just the sick reality at the moment. But Twitter is where I pretty much put out everything. And then people take my tweets and they share them across Facebook and all these places. So that's great. And my website is another really big place where people can find everything I'm doing, all the articles, all the research I'm putting out, the projects I'm working on. Everything's over there.
Let me give you a compliment on your website. I've been thinking for a long time about doing some t-shirts. I mean, so many people do Teespring, right? I've never done that. You've got very cool t-shirt designs. Who's designed those for you? Do you do that?
No, God, no. No, we crowdsourced that through, I think it's Designs 99. So basically, you say kind of what you want, and then some artists, it's basically crowdsourcing. You basically contract with just artists, to you, and you say, okay, so right now I have a few other ones that are going to be coming out soon, and we've been going back and forth with the designs, and you just pay them directly. It's so cool what technology can do in that way. So if I had their names on the top of my tongue, I would tell you who they were who designed it, but it's different people who designed each one.
All right. Well, they're terrific. And guys, I'm kind of a snob when it comes to logos. I'm very much into that stuff. And these are very vintage, retro, very cool logos. Check it out. That's at TiffanyFitzHenry.com.
Yes. Yeah, that's at TiffanyFitzHenry.com under merchandise. And I have a book series as well that I've had out for a couple of years. It's actually really eerily about the Great Awakening. I wrote it in about 2015, 2016. Those 3 books I wrote in those 2 years. But people can check that out too. It's on Audible. You can buy that all over the world.
All right. Well,